I think cancer is the perfect storm. I don't know what the initiating event is, the very, very first thing that happens. Is it a change in a gene that causes a change in the mitochondria? Is it a change in the mitochondria? Honestly, I don't know, but I do know, or I do believe, by the time we see a cancer, I don't think you can separate metabolic, genetic, and epigenetic activities in that tumor because they play off each other and one changes the other.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I am Dr. Don Agcopra, neurologist, and I am your host to this Low Carb Health Doctor podcast. I have envisioned this podcast towards the goal of helping you and everybody around the world attain real metabolic health. So every now and then, I pick on the minds of leading experts in metabolic health to help us all understand how to optimize not just our lifespan, but also our health span. And this will hopefully empower us all to live a longer and healthier life. Today, we are thrilled to welcome Professor Adrienne Scheck, a trailblazing researcher in neuro-oncology globally. Professor Scheck is a distinguished leader in the field of metabolic alteration as an adjuvant therapy for cancer, specifically brain tumors. And she is currently an adjunct researcher at the University of Arizona College of Medicine in Phoenix, and she has additional adjunct appointments at the Arizona State University. She has a PhD from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute and a career spanning prestigious institutions like the Memorial Sloan Kettering and Barrow Neurological Institute in Phoenix. Dr. Scheck has become a global leader in ketogenic metabolic therapy for brain tumors. Her groundbreaking research shows how ketogenic diets can slow tumor growth, enhance treatments like radiation, and even boost immune responses, offering hope for patients with aggressive cancers like glioblastoma. Passionate about mentoring the next generation of scientists, she has helped the career of over 160 students, from high schoolers to medical fellows, and thus Professor Scheck bridges cutting-edge science with real-world impact. It is also interesting to know that she is a certified animal lover with 3 horses and 2 cats. Whether you're a medical professional or simply curious about innovative cancer therapies, Professor Scheck's insights will surely captivate and inspire you. Welcome to the Low Carb Health Doctor, Professor Scheck.
Thank you. I'm embarrassed from that amazing introduction.
So we're also excited to introduce to you Dr. Julette Marie Batara, and she is our esteemed reactor for today's podcast. Dr. Batara is a highly respected neurologist and neuro-oncologist, and she's a leading expert in the management of brain tumors here in the Philippines. She's the first formally trained neuro-oncologist here in the Philippines, having completed her training at Johns Hopkins Medical Institutions. She currently serves as the head of the brain tumor service at St. Luke's Medical Center, and she's also the head of neuro-oncology at the University of the Philippines, Philippine General Hospital. She's the president of the Philippine Society for Neuro-Oncology, and her work is pivotal in advancing the field of neuro-oncology in the Philippines, where she has been instrumental in establishing multidisciplinary brain tumor centers to provide comprehensive care. Dr. Batara's expertise in conventional therapies, combined with her work in a resource-limited setting, makes her an invaluable voice in the discussion on novel approaches to brain tumor treatment. So whether you're a clinician or simply curious about brain health, Dr. Batara's expertise will really enrich our discussion for this podcast session today. Welcome to the Low Carb Health Doctor platform, Dr. Batara.
Thank you, Don, uh, for your introduction. Thank you.
Okay, so first off, Professor Scheck, I know that you have dedicated a lot of your career towards studying a very unique approach to cancer therapy with that which targets the metabolism of cancer cells. Can you share with us all how your journey in research in neuro-oncology started? What was the beginning of it all? And in particular, what eventually sparked your interest in exploring the relationship of diets, and specifically we're talking about the ketogenic metabolic therapeutic diet and brain cancer.
I'll preface my comments by saying I'm not an MD. I'm a lab scientist, and I'm not a biochemist. So you're not going to get a whole lot of deep biochemistry from me. But I moved here from New York with Doctors Joan and Bill Shapiro. Dr. Bill Shapiro, Dr. William Shapiro is a now retired, amazing neuro-oncologist. I think he almost kind of coined the phrase in some ways. And his wife, Dr. Joan Shapiro, ran the lab. So when they were moving from Sloan Kettering, they invited me to go with them, and I jumped at the opportunity. So we established a neuro-oncology lab, research lab here, started looking at things. I was actually looking at genes that might be involved in resistance. But then one day I was in the elevator lobby with Dr. Zhang Ro. Dr. Zhang Ro is an amazing man. He's a pediatric epileptologist who is at the top of treating children, but also at the top of the laboratory research. He's fantastic. So we started chatting, and he said to me, "You're interested in looking at ketones in brain tumors? There's this guy in Boston, Dr. Tom Seyfried, who I know you've had on your program, that's looking at it. And I've got a student that wants to be in the lab for 6 months, and I've got money for her, but no projects. I'll give her to you." So I took her, of course. And we actually started kind of playing with ketones and brain tumors. And I've got a couple slides I can show you that it's why I actually continued to go into it. Once we started with that work, my entire lab shifted to ketogenic diet because it looked so good. So if I can flip to a couple of slides, if that's okay.
Sure, Dr. Scheck.
Let's see. Let me share. Like I said, if this gets too much, just cut it off and I'll go back to just talk. Okay, I'm sharing.
No problem.
Okay, so when it comes to metabolism, I think everybody's heard of the Warburg effect, or a lot of people have, which is basically tumor cells need to get a lot of energy. They use energy, they use glucose strangely or in a different way to get energy. So they don't get a lot of energy from glucose, so they need a lot of glucose. So in the early days, it seemed reasonable that you could just starve tumors by reducing glucose. That seemed like a reasonable thought. Cancer metabolism, though, is a lot more than just glucose. It's basically all kinds of things. Nowadays, they're looking at all kinds of different metabolic issues. But in the old days, it was basically just the tip of the iceberg. So one of the things that's very interesting that I'm going to come back to, this is the hallmark of cancer picture. So each of these little pictures is a different hallmark of cancer. And if you look, there's metabolic things. It doesn't matter what they are, but they are basically affecting every single hallmark. So metabolism is like a lot more than just glucose, and I'm going to kind of prove that to you. In terms of therapies, and this is where my interest was, in the therapy, not in the formation of the cancer, but in the therapies, there really isn't a single therapy that's going to be effective. I think anybody who knows someone that's got cancer is going to say, yeah, they had all kinds of things. And tumors can change. They can shuffle their genes. So they change in response to therapy. And if you want to get increased efficacy or increased effectiveness, usually they add more therapies. That increases all the bad things, the negative side effects and things. So tumors recur anyway, and when they do, they usually don't respond to the therapies. So clearly something very different was needed. So this was the first experiment we did that kind of blew my mind. This is just this growth curve. This was a very, very aggressive tumor cell line that Joan Shapiro started in the lab. It came from the 4th recurrence of a tumor that this patient had. That's not the initials, so it's all HIPAA compliant. So if you did nothing, the cells grew very quickly. If you added BCNU or carmustine, that's a chemotherapeutic agent that this patient had. The growth lags, then it starts again. These cells, by the way, were grown in high glucose. We did not reduce the glucose. This is higher glucose than a person would have. If we added ketones, which is in the blue, They lagged a little, then they started to grow, but they grew slower. But what changed the direction of my lab was this purple line right here. When you added ketones to the chemotherapy, the cells basically just died. They did not come back. They didn't start to grow. So the fact that you could add ketones to a therapy that was at the time currently being used is what made me continue this work. We had to go into an animal model. I'm an animal lover, as you had mentioned. So we went into a mouse model, and essentially it was very simple. We implanted mouse tumor cells into the animal's brain. These were bioluminescent. We were able to track them with bioluminescence. It's very humane. It's very easy. You can track it. We checked their glucose and ketone level. And it turns out, even if you don't know exactly how to read one of these charts, the faster the line drops, the faster the animals are succumbing to the disease. On standard diet, this black line. On ketogenic diet, it's the red line. The animals lived longer. When we added it to temozolomide, which is the chemotherapy that's currently used, it's Temodar. Again, standard diet, ketogenic diet. It made the Temodar work better. But this is what blew our minds, and where I started to get phone calls and emails from patients, which is a very weird feeling for a PhD. When we used radiation, which is another standard therapy for brain tumors, this is standard diet with radiation. This is standard diet with ketogenic diet. This is radiation with ketogenic diet. This is radiation with standard diet. And because we were imaging these tumors every 3 days, we know they had the tumor at the beginning, and we know the tumor disappeared. And after a couple 100 days, we actually stopped. After 100 days, we stopped the ketogenic diet. The tumors didn't come back. So this was amazingly exciting and kind of really made sure we were going to continue. Other things we found out was edema or swelling around the tumor was reduced with the ketogenic diet. This is very important for survival of the patient, but also reduces the need for steroids and things. Assuming that this is all in mice, so assuming this all works in patients. But I know some neurosurgeons now that have done it, and they say, yeah, it's doing it. It reduces the formation of new blood vessels. That's what angiogenesis is. I'm going to show you in a little bit that it enhances the activity of a therapy that's being used in patients for this. So you can see standard diet, ketogenic diet, reduction. It reduced immunosuppression. So tumors suppress the immune system around them. And there are therapies that inhibit PD-L1 and CTLA-1. The specifics don't matter. Basically, what this is doing is it's reducing the anti-immune response. So the anti-tumor immune response is being enhanced. That's just the specifics for those of you who might really care about the specifics. But I told you that in the lab, we didn't reduce glucose. So how is it doing all of these things if we're not reducing glucose? It was doing so many things that at first I almost didn't believe it. It was like, it was too good. We think it's doing it with something called epigenetic modifications. For those of you who don't know what epigenetics is, basically it's changes in organisms that are caused by changes in whether the genes are turned on or turned off without changing the genes itself. So you're not mutating the genes, you're not deleting them, you're not messing them up. You're just adding things that are changing how they're being used. So that changes, obviously, a lot of things in the cell. So I'm not going to get into all that, but there is one I want to get into. This is beautiful work by my colleague, Dr. Nel Sayed at Imperial College. There's these thing called microRNAs. It is an epigenetic modification. They're tiny pieces of RNA, and they basically can change a bunch of genes. The gene expression just means, is the gene being used? Is it turned on or off? So they can change the expression of lots of genes, and these are all important in tumors. I'm going to go past this. I don't think it's really critical. But this was what we sent her tumor tissue from our animals that had been on ketogenic diet or not. And she found there were 55 microRNAs that were changed significantly. Why is that really exciting? Because this hallmark ring that I mentioned, these are the hallmarks of cancer. It's hard to see, but this is what these are. So it's like tumor promoting inflammation, things like that. These are classes of therapies that have been used to look at these different hallmarks. When we looked at the microRNAs that were changed, they affected just about, with this one exception, and it's probably one that down there now, this is an older slide, every single hallmark had a microRNA that would have affected it. So this ketogenic diet is just doing a huge amount, not just for energy, but for all kinds of things in the tumor. So like I said, it's not just glucose. This is kind of like almost a summary. So tumors can switch to other energy sources like glutamine if glucose is limiting. So we're not talking about just energy. It reduces growth factors. That's exactly what it sounds like. Factors that cause the tumor to grow. It reduces inflammation. It reduces swelling. It reduces the formation of blood vessels. If blood vessels can't get into the tumor dies. It reduces hypoxia. Hypoxia is reduced oxygen, and reduced oxygen is seen in areas that are therapy resistant. And it reduces the expression of other genes that turn on the tumor. So there's a huge amount that's going on when you do something like ketones. I don't know if you can see it with this little thing popping up, but it also enhances the anti-tumor immune response. So what's really exciting about that? This was our paper that showed the reduction of angiogenesis, or the formation of new blood vessels. There is a therapy that is used in brain tumor patients called bevacizumab or Avastin, and another group followed up on our paper showing that the ketogenic diet made Avastin work better. We showed the enhancement of immunity in the mouse model with the ketogenic diet. Another group went in and showed that, in fact, it enhances the activity of the therapies that are being looked at for anti-tumor immune response. It is helping, it's been shown that it helps to prevent the formation of resistance with certain therapies. It does affect epigenetics. So histone acetylation is a type of epigenetic modification, but the ketone beta hydroxybutyrate actually works as an inhibitor of this. There are drugs in this category that are being looked at for cancer. Well, it turns out that ketogenic diet mimics those drugs. And it's really being looked at for a lot of different therapeutic possibilities, including the gut microbiome. That's a big deal these days. Turns out ketogenic diet does alter the gut microbiome in a way that is good for enhancing therapies. So basically, when you talk about metabolic ketosis, or increasing the ketones, you've got profound changes in the expression of so many things that are likely to help inhibit the tumor, including the microenvironment, which is all the cells around it, all the immune cells around the tumor. And when you look at all these changes, you can start to see how this can enhance a lot of therapeutic strategies. Most of the therapeutic strategies that I'm aware of, I could easily make an argument for why this might help. However, this is a laboratory argument, and until it's actually looked at more in depth in patients, really all we can do is say, gee, it looks like we should try it. So I'm suggesting a paradigm shift, and this is not just me, this is a lot of people working in this field, that we're not talking about just glucose reduction when we talk about why this is working. So I think personally that the best use of the therapeutic ketosis is going to be with other therapies. Let's enhance their activity without increasing side effects, because very often you do not get an increase in side effects. In fact, there's publications showing that it very often will reduce side effects of some therapies with a variety of cancers. The fact that it does so many things, as I just said, really suggests that it should be used with a variety of therapies to see, is it going to help? Some patients have reported to the physicians that I'm with, they feel better, they've got more energy. The side effects seem to be less. So that's kind of where I'm going to leave this, because I really think that's what I really want people to see and to try.
That was a very interesting presentation you had there. Thank you very much, Dr. Scheck, for outlining everything with your nice slides, and especially the studies that you mentioned there. Dr. Batara, would you like to comment?
Yes. So thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. So I also believe that this is true. Um, and I actually have a patient who's on a ketogenic diet. He's a glioblastoma with an H3K27 mutation. And his parents have been very good about exploring all of the adjunct therapies. And yeah, he's now going on 3 years. And this tumor, as you know, is a very aggressive type of glioblastoma, and they only survive for about a year.
Yeah.
So my question would probably be, um, so this how how do you give the ketogenic diet? I think the most important thing is if it's done properly or not.
Yes, yes. So before I go directly to that, I'm going to tell you that I'm assuming that you're talking about what we would call a DIPG. I have started looking at keto with DIPG, and it does in the lab. It does seem to enhance radiation, and I'm working with the Max Love Project here to try to get this into more kids. There are some anecdotal reports of it really helping a lot. In terms of how to get it in, I'm not a dietitian. What I tell people when they contact me is first I tell them I'm not a physician. I'm not giving them medical
Correct.
advice. And the second I say they really need to work with a dietitian that knows what they're doing with keto because so many people do it wrong. And when they do it
Correct.
wrong, and it's easy to do it wrong. I was doing it wrong until I spoke to a friend of mine. When people do it wrong, then they say it doesn't work. And I think that's really unfortunate. So working with a dietitian, I also tell people that they should really get a meter and check their blood ketones and glucose. Because no matter what you're doing with your food, we all react to food differently, as you guys all know. And what causes ketones in one person might not really do as good a job in another. So if you're not actually testing, it's hard to really say
Correct.
you're in ketosis. So that's what I tell people because I'm not qualified to take somebody through a ketogenic diet. So I turn them on to somebody who is.
Thank you. Yes, for my patient, he's been having all the lab tests to monitor
Perfect.
how his glucose is very low. It's like in the range of 4 to 5. And all of the other parameters showing ketosis have been met.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
So
What's interesting is that people, when they hear how low somebody's glucose is, if they're really in ketosis, they say, well, how can you do that? You must feel terrible. And the people that I know that are on ketogenic diet and really gung-ho, they say, no, I feel great.
yes.
Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Don Agcopra of Low-Carb Health MD and lowcarbneurologist.com. It is my passion to help you live your longest and healthiest life. That's why we created Keto Metabolics, a comprehensive platform designed specifically to help you in your journey towards optimum longevity and health. And that means increasing your lifespan and health span. At Keto Metabolics, you will find so much more than just information. This is a hub where we dive deep into metabolic health through online courses, engaging webinars, and interactive workshops. Whether you prefer learning at your own pace from home or joining us for face-to-face presentations, Keto Metabolics brings you the science-backed strategies and practical tools you need to optimize your metabolism. This isn't just about weight loss. It's about empowering yourself to control your diabetes, hypertension, as well as avoiding all other deadly complications of insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome, such as heart attacks, strokes, kidney failure, and cancer, among many others. This means adding quality years to your life and feeling vibrant again every single day. Are you ready to invest in your future health? Come explore everything Keto Metabolics has to offer, and let's start improving our lifespan and health span together. Scan this QR code today or visit Keto Metabolics at bit.ly/Keto Metabolics. Very interesting comment you have there, Dr. Scheck. Let me go back to the basic things that you mentioned earlier, because globally, I know that for a really, really long time, cancer has always been thought of by the mainstream as it's initially a purely genetic disease. And in your presentation earlier, you mentioned other facets as well, including metabolism. So I remember Professor Thomas Seyfried when I talked to him, like I think it was last year. He's from, for the benefit of everybody, he's a cancer researcher also, focusing on brain tumors from Boston College. And he mentioned to me that based on his research, he's of the opinion that cancer is primarily a mitochondrial metabolic disease. And I also talked to a fellow neurologist from New Zealand who was originally from Canada, I think Matt Phillips, Dr. Matthew Phillips, and he's also doing research in that direction. I think you're acquainted with him also, because I saw his name together with yours in one of the more recent studies on, I think, the directions towards research in ketogenic metabolic therapy for brain tumor. So my question is, what do you think of the statement that cancer is primarily a mitochondrial metabolic disease?
Tom and I agree to disagree to some extent. We are friends. We all know each other. When I give talks to lay people, I actually have a small series of slides where I have 3 different colored balls of yarn. One of them says genetics, one of them says metabolism, and one of them says epigenetics. And the next slide is a bunch of kittens playing with the yarn. So you get a bowl of all these different colors totally mixed up, and you can't possibly separate them. I think that's how I see it. I think cancer is the perfect storm. I don't know what the initiating event is, the very, very first thing that happens. Is it a change in a gene that causes a change in the mitochondria? Is it a change in the mitochondria? Honestly, I don't know, but I do know, or I do believe, by the time we see a cancer, I don't think you can separate metabolic, genetic, and epigenetic activities in that tumor, because they play off each other and one changes the other. And my concern, or my thought about calling cancer purely metabolic, is I think sometimes that leads people to feel they can treat their tumor by just changing what they eat, and it's going to go away. It's going to go backwards from being a tumor to being normal cells again. And that's just not going to happen. There are a few people that have, had tumor regression or tumor, I guess, cure, if you want to call it that, just by diet. But they are so few. It's even less than what you would call anecdotal. The vast majority of patients that I'm aware of that have tried that, and again, I've spoken to physicians like Dr. Chris Smith. You should have him on your talk. He's amazing. He's a neurosurgeon, and he's very much into doing keto. He says he has not seen the keto diet or any other diet curing cancer. So that's kind of my concern. There's a saying, closing the door, the barn door, after the horse is out. Once that horse is out, changing one thing, I don't think is going to put him back in the barn. So.
Thank you for that. So a lot of patients want to go natural or just no medication, and it just doesn't work. But at the same time, there are more studies now being done on the tumor microenvironment.
Yes.
To look at how that's affecting tumor growth and what can be done about changing the tumor microenvironment.
Yes, absolutely.
And I also agree that it's not just glucose that's being affected by the ketogenic diet, because at Hopkins, there's a very large study on the relationship of the blood sugar levels and survival. And it actually didn't change survival in people who were not diabetic, but in patients who couldn't properly metabolize their sugar, it did have an effect on survival.
Yeah, there are actually I've seen some papers that say yes and some that say no about hyperglycemic and survival, but there are certainly studies that say that it doesn't matter. There are also some that say it does, but what that tells me is there's something else going on that we don't know to look at
Correct.
yet.
Yes.
So I truly believe in that. And my colleague, Dr. Nel Sayed, is very interested in the tumor microenvironment. So in addition to our work together with the ketogenic diet, she's also been spearheading an arginine inhibitor that's doing some really nice things. I think they're looking at putting it in a clinical trial. So there's so much involved with metabolism beyond glucose. Yeah.
Dr. Scheck, you mentioned the multifaceted, let's say, effects of ketogenic metabolic therapy towards tumor metabolism. So it's almost like saying it's a snake oil.
That's what I used to think. Yes.
So, but the question is, what because I've been through metabolic approaches in neurologic patients for quite some time now, especially after I tried it myself and I reversed my own metabolic syndrome. So I've also talked with many other researchers regarding this thing and in this particular field. So I know for a fact that many patients going on ketogenic metabolic therapy have truly reversed their metabolic syndrome, which has insulin resistance at the root cause. And it's all about the chronic elevations of insulin in the bloodstream of, I think, almost all people having insulin resistance, or later on this progresses to advanced form, which comes out in the form of type 2 diabetes nowadays, which is really, really, very, very rampant worldwide. So my question is, do you think this aspect about the prevalence of insulin resistance and the corresponding elevations in insulin has an impact in tumor growth, knowing that, for example, there are insulin-like growth factors that are affecting tumor metabolism as well? Is this perhaps one avenue towards that end?
I think so. And one of the slides I didn't show you is the slide I have showing a reduction in insulin-like growth factor in the animals on the ketogenic diet. So that actually also it reduces the insulin-like growth factor. So yes, I do think it makes a difference. And I do think not only did the ketogenic diet in our animals reduce some of the growth factors like insulin-like growth factor, but when you have a growth factor, you've got all of these there's something on the surface of the cell, and I know you guys know this, but you said that there were some lay people, so I figured I'd kind of explain it a little. So if this is the cell, you've got a receptor here, is a little thing that's going to grab the growth factor as it goes by. And once it goes in, it's going to change this and this and this and this and this and this until it finally gets to the nucleus and causes a change. So some of those steps that it goes through also get changed. So you're not just changing the growth factor itself, but you're actually changing some of the signals it sends a little bit. So anything that does those sorts of things is going to help. So yes, what I'm saying is, yeah, I think the insulin is definitely helping to cause problems. And that's one of the things that's probably one of the things that affects how much hyper or hypoglycemia affects cancer, something that Dr. Batara and I mentioned just a few minutes ago, that she mentioned a few minutes ago.
I recently had I don't know if you know him, Professor Thomas Wimes. He's a kidney researcher at the University of California, Santa Barbara. And
no, I don't.
You haven't met him before? So
No.
He is a kidney researcher. He's focusing on chronic kidney disease and specifically ADPKD, polycystic kidney disease. And currently he is really making headway towards reversing chronic kidney disease with ketogenic metabolic therapy. You can probably look him up. I haven't placed that podcast yet in my playlist. So apart from ketogenic metabolic therapy, Professor Wimes' research is also pointing towards the direction of the benefit of giving patients exogenous ketone supplements, and he has this brand called Keto actually that those he and his colleagues at the UCSB are coming out with. So his research is pointing towards that direction. So especially those with difficulty adhering to strict ketogenic dietary therapy. So they give exogenous ketone supplements. Do you think the same strategy would probably work as well in ketogenic metabolic therapy for cancer?
That is an awesome question, and it's one we've had a lot of discussions with in my lab over the years. Because, like you said, the ketogenic diet is not easy. The only thing that, and Dr. Don D'Agostino, actually Dr. Angela Poff, working with him, they've done work with exogenous ketones. He's got some patented versions and things, and they have shown that some of their formulations seem to make a difference. They didn't all, depending on the formulation, they didn't all make the same difference in these animals, which is very interesting, depending on the chemistry. But my concern when you go into people is, and I've done this, I've actually taken some of them, tested some of them myself, and then checked my blood every 15 minutes. And your ketones go up, but they don't stay up very long, and then they come back down. So if in cancer, and I say if because honestly, we just don't know, there just isn't enough done yet. But if in cancer you need that steady state of reduced glucose, increased ketones, you're not going to get it from exogenous ketones alone. One of the things we thought of, because of the way it enhances radiation, is, and it's thought to be neuroprotective. So if I could slam dunk for kids, right? If they have to have their heads radiated, let's enhance the radiation and reduce the bad effects on the brain. We thought, well, what if you just dose them with exogenous ketones an hour before or a day before, whatever? If you shot their ketones up just before, would that give the same effect? We haven't done that experiment. We don't know. Some of it comes down, frankly, to funding. I hate to say it, but that's where it comes down to. But it's an interesting question. How long do you have to have that increase in ketones to get the effects you're looking at? And does it have to be steady state? Does it have to be all the time? Can you just goose it? Will that make the difference? I wish I knew. The other thing we thought of was if you have somebody on a ketogenic diet, can they take exogenous ketones just to give them that extra little boost before some of these therapies? I think these are all things that people will probably try. And once you get people reporting it, that's what kind of pushes the physicians to try it.
Yeah, the hard thing about, I think, the exogenous ketones is that the ketogenic diet might not just be relying on just ketones.
Yeah.
And that there are other factors, not just having a high level of ketones that's causing the ketogenic diet to work. So I'm not so sure about just giving exogenous ketones.
I would agree. And I know that Dr. Angela Poff, because she and I are also friends, she said, because I said, well, what about the reduction in glucose? And she said when they tried the exogenous ketones, they saw a slight reduction in glucose. Is it enough to make a difference? Don't know. And I'm willing to bet that what, quote, makes a difference is going to be different for different people, different tumors, the molecular biology of their tumors, things like that.
Dr. Scheck, I'll show you something here.
Sure.
Hold on. So I think this one. I'll share something. So this is a recent paper. It was. Do you see it in your screen? This was a recent paper.
Yes, I do. I'm very aware of that paper.
You and your colleagues came out with last December. So actually, I got aware of this because of Professor Tom Seyfried and Dr. Phillips, because they are your co-authors here. Can you tell us all a bit about this and what's this all about?
Actually, Tomas Daraj really did the lion's share of this, and then he sent it to us, and I know I sent it back to him multiple times. They did it's a major, what I would call tour de force. They put a huge amount in there, which is great. Um, the one thing that I was suggesting to them is they back off a little bit on keto being by, on its own. So they did add all of the other therapies and stuff in there, which I think is great. One of the things that we all agree with is it's difficult to figure out whether keto is working when you've got in terms of a trial that would convince physicians that are not already convinced, um, because everybody does it differently. People have different ideas of how high should your ketones go? What do you need to do it with plant-based? Do you need to do it with meat-based? Do you need it to all the different ways to do it? So what Tomas did and what we all helped with was to get as much of the data together as possible in one huge paper. And the hope is that if people read this, especially physicians, that they'll say, okay, well, yeah, maybe we should try this, and maybe we should figure out how to try this in a way that we can then compare the data from one place to another. It is very difficult to compare the data from one place to another because I don't think it's only your ketone level and your glucose level. There's more to it. It's not just the GKI index. I know that's Thomas Seyfried's baby to come up with a ratio, and that's really good as a starting point. But you can get the same ratio with very different numbers of ketones and glucose. So that's an awesome thing to look at, but we've got to look at more. And Dr. Dr. Jethro Hu has an NIH grant for a clinical trial for ketones, ketogenic diet. And he just came out with a first paper for the first 3 months that basically says, yes, he could get his patients to do it. So it'll be very interesting to see where that goes.
Mm-hmm. So that's a wonderful thing to hear about. So Professor Tom Seyfried also and colleagues came up with this what they call the press pulse protocol. I think you've heard of that.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
got a paper on that, I think, about a couple of years back as a
Mhm.
novel therapeutic strategy, and it's
Yeah.
supposed to be for the metabolic management of cancer.
Right.
For the benefit of those who are not familiar with it, the press part goes with the ketogenic metabolic therapeutic diet, providing metabolic pressure on cancer cells. And Matt Phillips also mentioned something about this to me when we talked before. And the pulse part involves the administration of intermittent pulses of certain adjuvant drugs that targets the glutamine part of the fuel for the cancer cell, which is accordingly being used as a fuel of cancer cells via what is called the substrate level phosphorylation of glutamine in the mitochondria. What are your thoughts about this protocol, Dr. Scheck?
I don't know about the pulsing, but in terms of the use of two things like that, I don't know about the timing is what I meant. I think it's great. The only issue is when he first started talking about it, he was talking about a drug called Don, and people got all excited, and Don was toxic and not available. But what I've been told is that there is now a non-toxic or a less toxic version that is becoming available. One of the companies has come out with something. I don't remember, it's got numbers in it. I don't remember the exact name, but I'd love to see that done with this other drug that's less toxic. It also affects glutamine. It basically is like a pro-drug of Don. So I think that now it is. So when he first came out with it, which I thought was a great idea, I don't know that it was clinically doable because of the toxicity of Don, but now I think it might be. And I'd love to see it done.
Yeah, and I knew that they're not just using Don, they're also using other adjuvants like including, for example, ivermectin and some antiparasitic drugs like
Yeah, that's become popular.
fembendazole.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So have you come across that before, and have you tried doing that in any of your trials and collaborations?
I've heard of it. I know that mebendazole in particular, I know in the mouse colonies, if they were using that, the tumor people got all upset. Because it apparently, at least in animals, was anti-tumor. Ivermectin is kind of interesting because we use it in horses as an antiparasitic. But I think that the jury is still out with those. I'm not saying that they work. I'm not saying they don't. I think that more studies need to be done. My concern with a lot of this stuff, and I think Dr. Batara is probably going to jump in on this and agree. The internet is patient's best friend and the patient's worst enemy. There's a lot of stuff that gets out there that is basically wrong, and there's no way to know if it's right or wrong. If you don't go to the actual scientific literature and look at it. So I think a lot of people get very excited. They jump on it. They're going to take all this stuff. But unless there's a clinical trial or something that is more controlled, it's hard to really say yes or no, it should be done. What's done in a couple of people might not be good. Plus, if they're adding it to standard of care, it has to be demonstrated that it's not going to reduce the efficacy of standard of care. So I'm all for studying those things. I have not personally studied it. I think there's definitely some possibilities. My definition of anecdotal studies is things that people report as possibly right, and if there's enough of them, it's something scientists should look at. I don't think anecdotal studies are wrong or anecdotal reports. I just think that they should guide us in terms of what we should look at in more depth. And I think ivermectin and mebendazole come under that heading for me, is we really need to do some better studies.
Thank you very much for that. So I admire your mindset, Dr. Scheck, because I think the real problem with all of these therapies or the proposed therapies and why they're unpopular with many doctors who follow evidence-based medicine is because a lot of people trumpet about these alternative therapies without really emphasizing that it has to be given with standard of care and that they cannot be given alone. And when people read these things, they think, oh, we can change our treatment and just go with this. So, and a lot of people who are averse to getting chemotherapy, and actually, a lot of the medicines that we use for brain tumors are not chemotherapy and they don't cause those effects. But people still say, oh, we'd rather go natural, or there's a lot on the internet and they are things that we can use instead. So I think that when we talk about treatments like the ketogenic diet, we have to emphasize that they work in making things better, but not by themselves.
Right. I
And
totally
I think
agree. And I also,
we would also get more miles with the doctors and people who would be willing to use them instead of it being
definitely.
an enemy. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think a lot of physicians don't want to use it because they don't know enough about it, so they can't monitor it. And if they don't have a trained dietitian working with them, there's nothing they can do to help their patients with it. The other thing that concerns me about some of these other things that come out on the internet is the first thing I did when I wanted to look at the ketogenic diet was try it with standard of care, because I was not going to continue looking at it if it didn't work with standard of care, if it inhibited standard of care. I think there's a lot of stuff that people talk about on the internet, and I'm not talking about ivermectin or benzol or any of those, but there's just a bunch of things that can actually inhibit
all kinds of things. Correct.
all kinds of supplements, in fact. And if you're inhibiting the standard of care, you're not doing the patient, the patient's not doing himself any good.
Yeah, like a lot of patients see me to say, can we use this together with a treatment, like all of these supplements? And I tell them, I really don't know if it's helping. And I don't know if you're feeding the tumor as well with all of these supplements, because you really can't say if you're just helping the normal cells, but you may also be helping the tumor cells to grow.
Absolutely. The other thing about some of the supplements is most of them, from what I've been told, are not really monitored for purity and all that stuff.
Correct.
At least in this country, they get around, the FDA stuff, but that means you've got to be careful about what's actually in there.
Yes, and some of them do cause, a nephrologist told me that 30% of these supplements actually cause kidney failure or kidney disease, and some do affect bleeding and hepatic function and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Very scary.
And that's why we also need to be very cautious about just trumpeting any of them. Yeah.
Yeah. And the nice thing about the ketogenic diet, because it doesn't have clinical trial based proof that it works. There's a lot of anecdotal stuff, but not the clinical, because to be honest, getting funding for it is really difficult. There's no pharmaceutical
Correct.
company that's going to help fund it. Um, but it has a very long safety record in the epilepsy
Mm-hmm.
population.
Correct.
There's a
Yes.
huge amount that
I
people
was
know
going
about
to
the side
mention
effects
that.
and stuff.
Yes.
So that makes you feel better about it.
Because as a
Mhm.
doctor, you have to look at the safety before anything else.
Oh, of course. Yes. And anything I say, as a scientist, people actually believe me, which sometimes scares me. It's like, no, I'm telling you about the cells in the lab or my mice. I can cure mice of cancer, but I caused it. So, um, but uh, the fact that it's got the safety record makes me much more comfortable about saying what I say and not being as scared that a layperson is going to take what I say too much to heart without going to their physician. That's the other thing I always
Mhm.
tell them is like, whether your physician is for it or against it doesn't matter. You have to tell them you're doing it. They have to know. Because some patients will say, well, my physician doesn't want me to do it. I just won't tell them. And I go, no, they have to know. Because they have to monitor your blood for stuff. They have to know every single thing you're doing. And I think that's also really important, along with testing their blood and getting a good dietitian, is they've got to tell their physicians what they're doing. Their care team. It comes under that same umbrella.
Correct.
And to add to that statement you mentioned earlier, before Dr. Scheck, physicians all over the world, I think one of the limitations also that we have is that we lack extensive training in nutrition, even in our medical education. So that's
Hmm.
why I think if ever it was just part of biochemistry that we learned something about the dynamics and the in the dynamics of metabolism and nutrition. That's
Hmm.
why most doctors, probably most physicians, are wary in terms of intervening with such a thing as a ketogenic metabolic therapy because it is
Sure.
something a bit foreign to them. Yeah.
Yes. I have a friend that's a physician, and we were at a meeting together years ago, and it was a mixed layperson professional meeting, and the layperson stood up and said, "Well, physicians get, I forget how many hours of nutrition, very little." And under his breath, he turned to me and says, "Yeah, and if they heard what we got, they'd want us to get less." Because in this country, certainly fat has been vilified. Fat is terrible, and the whole food pyramid and everything. People are starting to think maybe that's not right, but that's the kind of nutritional information they get. It needs to change, but there needs to be enough data to prove that it should change.
Mhm. Do you have any additional questions to the research of Dr. Scheck, Dr. Batara?
Oh, I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay,
But I
Your
so
find it
comments have been
very
great.
interesting. Yes.
I have loved your
uh,
comments. Thank you very much.
uh, so
One other
uh,
thing I'll
doc,
add. I'm sorry, before we close, one other thing. If you get a chance to get Dr. Mary Newport on your show for Alzheimer's, the whole
yeah.
ketones and Alzheimer's has been fascinating to follow.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think I'll be seeing her this September. She's coming over to Manila for a conference. So I'm also talking in that conference. It's
okay.
for it's a ketogenic conference here in the Philippines, and
Oh, cool.
Dr. Newport is really
Yes.
one of the most I think known advocates for that, especially in dementia in relation to her
Yes.
husband. Yeah. So
Yes.
just a thing before we close this, Dr. Sheikh, in your opinion, what does the future of metabolic therapy for cancer look like? Do you see it becoming eventually part of the standard of care in cancer treatment? And
I
what
sure
currently
hope
is,
so.
yeah, probably the biggest question your lab is trying to answer right now towards that end?
We're um we're looking at the effects because of where I am right now, and the fact that we've got this seahorse instrument which looks at mitochondria and stuff. We're looking at effects of mitochondria on the mitochondria. We're trying to figure out, one of the things I've been trying to push is what happens when somebody's on the ketogenic diet long term. So when patients are, I became friendly with some of these patients, they give me updates and stuff. And it looks like the ketogenic diet is doing great and it goes for a long time and everything's fine. And then all of a sudden it stops working. So there's a number of possibilities. The two that I think about immediately is, first of all, maybe their tumor became glutamine dependent, which is something that I think Dr. Chris Smith would like to approach with with one of the glutamine inhibitors. But the other is that the mitochondria are just changing somehow and not being affected as much. So we're looking at changes in the mitochondria. We're trying to look at what happens in our cells when they're on ketones long term. So I actually sent out some cells for RNA-seq data, which is just looking at the entire transcript, everything that's turned on in cells that had been on the ketogenic diet for a month. So essentially on ketones for a month. What's changing long term? And I'm kind of hoping that that'll give us some hints as to how to make the ketogenic diet better.
You mentioned something about the mitochondria before I wrap this up. Dr. Matt Phillips has this thing about mitohormesis. I don't know if you've come across this paper.
I'm sorry, about what?
Mitohormesis.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Have you heard of that?
I have not seen. I've heard of it. I have to admit, I have not gotten into those papers yet.
Okay. So I'll just
But I will.
reserve that. I'll just reserve that question for you some other time, perhaps. So it's about giving stress, some kind of stressor to the mitochondria, and then later on helping it improve its defenses. And then also it also aligns with mitochondrial bioenergetics, which is also one of the focus of research of Professor Ben Bickman. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
I don't know him personally.
Yeah, Brigham Young University. So towards this end, for someone who was a loved one with for example, a brain tumor, Dr. Scheck, what is the most important takeaway message that you can give from your research that you think they should be able to understand? And corollary to that, if you could give one message to the global cancer research community right now, what would it be from your end?
To the global cancer community, diet is not a 4-letter word. Okay, it's not a bad thing. It's changing metabolism is therapeutic. It's good. It's important. That would and it needs to be studied more. All the immunotherapies and RNA therapies and stuff. They all are working within a world of metabolism in your body. So I think you need to look at the whole picture. That might include nutrigenomics, finding out how a body handles nutrition, but it really does, you have to take a step back and look at the whole person and the cancer in the person. From the point of view of somebody with a loved one, I would say absolutely ketogenic diet as fast as you can with a trained dietitian that can take that person through. The people we've seen here that were successful, they were willing to contact that dietitian every day if necessary to ask a question until they really got it going for themselves. So they've got to be willing to ask for help. They've got to know where to get that help, which would be somebody who knows basically what they're doing. And they need to make sure they're in ketosis, not just trust that if they're eating the right stuff, they are. So prove that you're doing it and then work with people that know how to enhance it.
Would you have anything to add in closing this discussion, Dr. Batara?
Well, we need more people like Dr. Scheck. So yes, I agree
You too.
that I agree that we should do more research, and because brain tumors in itself are very complicated, and I just think the tumors are very smart, and they have different avenues um, of escaping whatever we do, and so you need to close all of those escape routes together.
Perfect. Yes, very well said.
Thank you to the both of you. And if anyone listening to this podcast would like to follow your work or perhaps support the research that you and your colleagues are doing, how could they do that? And where do they go to follow you, Dr. Scheck?
I haven't published a brain tumor paper in a while because I had a couple of lab moves and changes and stuff, so I'm hoping that will change. You can find talks on, you can find my older papers online, and they're available to anybody. They're in what's called open access journals. I'm starting a foundation of my own so that I can accept donations directly for my research. You can also, I guess you can give donations to the University of Arizona in my name, but once I get my foundation up and running, that will be the easiest way, because 100%, every penny will go towards the research.
Thank you for that, Dr. Scheck. How about you, Dr. Batara? How would people find you?
Oh, I think I'm all over the internet. So yeah, but mostly I'm in St. Luke's and in PGH, where we both come from. Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Scheck and Dr. Batara, thank you very much for joining me in this session of the Low Carb Health Doctor podcast. And I hope that everybody tuning in, not just the general public, but also perhaps the cancer researchers and clinicians and doctors listening, will be getting much out of these things that we have just talked about. And once again, thank you, Dr. Scheck and Dr. Batara. And to you all listening, I'll see you in the next Low Carb Health Doctor podcast.